All right.
All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Michael with Infinit Nutrition. We've got a great guest this morning, Ben Kanute, who's coming us from Samarin, Slovakia, all the way over there, obviously representing Team USA in the red, white, and blue from head to toe. How you doing, Ben?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's awesome. Obviously, we've had a relationship with Infinit and you for a few years now, and it's been very successful. I know you had a great year last year with the Oceanside victory. Congratulations on that one, by the way. Nice work.
Thanks.
Yeah. So tell me where you are right now and a little bit about what you're doing with the Cup.
Yeah, so there's this really awesome race, the Collins Cup, that's happening this Saturday. So in a few days, couple days here. It's a little bit different format. It's USA versus Europe versus Team International, and it's kind of a head-to-head race. So I'm actually finding out who I'm racing against in just a couple hours here. But yeah, it's one of the kind of Professional Triathlon Organization's marquee events. The other one being the Canadian Open in Edmonton, and then the US Open in Dallas coming up in September. So a really awesome organization, lots of fun, fast racing. And yeah, it's like that 100K distance. So just under half Ironman and just a lot of fun to do.
I love that 100K distance. I think it's such a great thing because you don't get so ripped up. You know, it's a really good, hard event. It's got good length to it, but at the same time, you're just not getting shredded up. So that's cool. Is there anybody that you want to go up against?
Yeah, we've been getting that question a lot. And as of right now, not really. I think that overall, the first Collins Cup was competitive, but this one is even more so. So pretty much anybody who they pair me up against will be a good matchup, I think.
Nice. Who's racing well on your team right now?
Oh, we've got some great individuals. Always like Sam Long, Rudy Von Berg. We have Matt Hansen, Chris Lieferman, Jason West are all of the guys. And on the women's side, Sarah True, Jackie Herring, Jocelyn McCauley, Chelsea Sidaro, and there's a couple others. So I'm remembering all 12 names.
Yeah, that was good, actually. I couldn't have gotten 10. No way.
Yeah. So, no, we've got a lot of good people here. So a strong U.S. team for sure.
Excellent. And then you guys go out to dinner just from a social point of view? Do you hang out, or does everybody kind of do their own thing?
Yeah, the cool part about this race is there's actually from all three teams kind of a lot of hanging out because it's a cafeteria style breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you get to see a lot of the athletes throughout the week. We all were basically here by Tuesday. So you start to see the same people again and again. And it's a good way to kind of catch up, see what else is going on in the pro tour, and get in some training with some other people too, as everybody kind of gears up for the weekend.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like pretty cool. So what got you into triathlon in the first place?
Yeah, well, my first triathlon was one that I watched, and it was my dad compete at the Mrs. T's triathlon back in, I think it was 96 or so, give or take a year. And we would watch the Ironman World Champs each year when it would come on NBC or whatever channel was hosting it at the time. And I actually got the opportunity to race as a kid pretty early on, about age 8 or 9, and just, tried that first one, was on a local swim team, loved swimming, biking, running all in one. And in my hometown, a few years later, I had the opportunity to join a kids triathlon team that was very kind of high performance directed. And that just got me jump started into the whole USA triathlon kind of Olympic funnel, Olympic pathway, and just kind of hit the ground full speed running.
That's neat. I raced that race. I was at Mrs. T's that year.
Nice.
I'm probably right about your dad's age, which is was when Greg Welch and that football player, I forget, was around mid-90s.
Yeah. That's awesome. Super
So
cool.
Did you grow up in Naperville, or where were you up in Chicago?
Close. I was Geneva, so right in between like St. Charles and Batavia, and that's actually where my parents grew up. So yeah, was there, and there was just kind of a crazy little hotbed of triathletes there, and youth triathletes as well.
And swimming, that's just such a swimming hotbed up there between the
Yeah.
Naperville clubs and everything. That's really neat. So how many races did your dad do? Did he try and qualify, or what was his kind of deal?
He raced a number. He did Ironman Wisconsin for a number of years, and he did Ironman Hawaii. He didn't qualify. He got in. One of his buddies had a sponsorship slot there, so they went out and raced it though, and had a great time. And he took a bit of a break when as me and my brothers were kind of growing up, but he's making his comeback. And once he retires, I think he's got an Ironman in the back of his mind. So I don't know if he's shared that super publicly yet. So this is his kind of like holding him to that goal.
Sounds like you might have to have a small sponsorship for your old man. I don't know. Get him hooked up with the magic powders.
Yeah, get him a custom blend going. The
Boom.
comeback blend.
Boom. Done. Love it. Oh, that's cool. So you went, and then from there you went to University of Arizona. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So I
got serious at that point.
Yeah. In high school I raced cross country and swimming in high school, but had no real plans to do a single sport in college and go for a scholarship that way. So I went about looking for schools kind of differently, looking at places that would be good to train for triathlon, but also have a good education and focus on exercise physiology if I could. And
at that time, there was no club system back then in college. I mean, there was clubs probably, but there was no varsity, or there was nothing really too organized, if I remember correctly, back in that time period at the collegiate level.
Yeah, so Collegiate Club Nationals has been going on for a while. Like I guess T.O. and Ben Hoffman and some of those guys raced it back in the day, but there was no NCAA programs at all. They were still trying to do that. And honestly, for guys, there probably will never be NCAA triathlon unless we can really get the sport to grow a bunch just because of Title IX. So the women, I think it's pretty close to, being solidified as a full-fledged NCAA and having all the amount of schools going in.
Yeah, Jimmy Riccatello has done an amazing job, and there's a bunch of guys that have really, the women's triathlon scene and the collegiate and mountain biking too is fantastic. It's really great.
Yeah. And so I went there, and there actually was like a pretty decent club team, and I wasn't going to be super involved with them, maybe get the opportunity to race collegiate nationals and try and win a title there. But they actually ended up having a great group of guys who were pretty talented for the collegiate scene and came from some running backgrounds and a couple of guys from a swimming background. So we had a good time just kind of training together, and we're pretty successful, and raced a lot more with them than I thought I would, which was great. And it kind of helped me, keep training hard and stay focused during college, which was good because then I took my elite license after my freshman year. USAT offered to take me over to Europe to do like kind of a crash course in racing for a month and race a bunch of different styles and distances, and just jumped at that opportunity.
That's great. And you won a title as a junior, if I remember correctly, didn't you?
Yeah, so I've won youth and junior national titles, a collegiate national title, and even as an elite, I think I had like a super sprint or a sprint in there or something. Just missed out on that U23 national championship.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what's your favorite distance? You've run the gamut. You've done the super sprint up for the long.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever really had a favorite distance. I think there are certain aspects of each distance that I prefer over other ones. Like I love the intensity of the super sprint and how you just have to be on mentally and physically. Like there's no real room for mistakes. But I also love, the half or the 100K distance where you have a lot of time to kind of think, to plan out things. It's not like always so reactionary. It's a lot of like kind of just getting the best out of yourself on the day, but still has that level of race dynamics. So still haven't debuted at the full distance, but that's even, I imagine one of the things that I will enjoy there is it's purely there's no real responding to race dynamics there overall. It's a lot of focusing on yourself, making sure you're getting in your nutrition, really staying dialed in everything, because it's such a long race that if you push too hard too early or try and go too far above, you just pay for it like later on.
In there, understand that one. So from Arizona, then you went to ITU and raced on the ITU circuit for how long did you do that?
Yeah. So the ITU circuit, like the youth and junior program, basically mimic the ITU system. So it's all draft legal, from basically the age of 12 for me. So it's 13 and up. But you race your age you turn at the end of the year. And with a December birthday, I was a 12-year-old racing everybody else. So, started from pretty much the age of 12 all the way through, for sure, 2016 when I qualified and went to the Olympics. That was kind of like I was pretty much a pure ITU Olympic style triathlete. And then in 2017, I started kind of the balancing act of doing non-draft and half Ironman distance stuff, as well as still doing some ITU style racing, and continued that with maybe more of an emphasis at times on the half distance, but I'm still taking part in the ITU stuff because of the mixed relay and the opportunity to potentially make the team in Tokyo, which ended up not panning out, but was able to balance both of those relatively well through 2019 at least. And then, the pandemic kind of had everybody scrambling a little bit, but
it seems like it. I mean, it seems like you've been a short course guy for, you're a fast twitch guy, and you're in process of transitioning, and then COVID hits. I mean, that's got to put a big fly in the middle of your soup.
Yeah, and I'd hit 2019 really well, and felt like I positioned myself to make the Olympic team, or at least put up a few good results to kind of put myself toward the front of the list. Yeah. 2020 going into 2021 with that kind of delay in racing, a lot of U.S. guys on the Olympic side kind of stepped up, and they were racing really well. And I put off some of that racing and traveling the world because one of COVID, and my wife was pregnant at the time too. And we just decided.
Congratulations, by the way. I knew that. First one, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of laid low a little bit, and that's just where like 2021 then at the beginning of the year started off super strong. But when you balance like middle distance racing and kind of choosing your own race schedule, but then the Olympic style, which the way that I went about it relied a lot on USA Triathlon putting me into races, which always takes a little bit of time and is a little bit last minute at certain aspects. I just didn't fully give myself the full opportunity to race as well there. So yeah, now we've kind of made the decision after that is kind of moving on from a lot of the Olympic style and focusing more on middle distance. And I really think that, over the years, my strength has been my strength, and that translates really well to half Ironman style racing, Ironman style racing. So yeah, it's fun to have kind of full control of my schedule and kind of be in control of my destiny.
Yeah, I've always thought that Ironman is you get better at Ironman when you have life experience. You get beat up a little bit, right? And you just sort of get used to getting slugged in the face. So it fits in perfectly with what Ironman's all about.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, it's a war of attrition.
Yeah, it is. So we mentioned that you had a kid. How's that affecting your life? I mean, as far as training schedule and wanting to be home and all those kind of things as a professional athlete, it's got to change your schedule, at least your approach on how you're training, I would think, quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, for me, it really reiterated, like, when I'm out training, I want to make the most of when I'm out there and not like waste any time like in between, because I want to be back and be with my wife and my daughter and just like be able to have family time as well. I do believe in dad strength. I think that, you get that little extra bit of energy when you have a kid. And yeah, I mean, it's just been fun to kind of learn and, experience life almost through fresh eyes and watching it through, like, as my daughter grows up, just watching her experience things for the first time. It's just been a ton of fun. And Courtney's been able to help out a ton. Like, I wouldn't be able to do the sport and be a dad without all of the help that Courtney gives me, and being able to just take care of Briella and watch her while I'm off, sometimes riding 4 hours or something like that. So, yeah, she's been awesome. And through that first year, especially when my daughter did not really want to sleep much at all, like, Courtney took on the brunt of all of that and allowed me to have some really great races early on. So, much better on the sleep front now. Everybody in the house is getting a lot more sleep, so that's always good. And yeah, we're just enjoying every moment of it.
That's fantastic. That's great. So tell me about your typical training as far as volumes per week, and how's that changed over time? I know, there's all kinds of different schools of thought that come into training protocols when it comes to, long, slow distance, low heart rate. Where do you ascribe? What works for you? What do you like to do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for me right now, because we're kind of going through a phase of, like, going back to what's worked for us well. I think that this year has been challenging in some ways, just because the beginning of the year, my family caught COVID, and we've had a couple sicknesses come through that have kind of cut some training blocks short. Felt like we needed to squeeze some stuff in here and there. And I think that's kind of, hindered the middle of my season with just some poorly timed sicknesses and structure of the training. It's left a small margin of error. But we've recently gone back to doing what's worked really well in past years when we've tried to balance 70.3 and the shorter distances, is doing a 10-day block of volume where we shoot for anywhere from kind of 35 to 50 hours max in that 10 days. And most of that is based around just, aerobic volume up to kind of 70.3 pace, which is not quite as hard as threshold, but you're getting to push pretty good power on the bike and running still pretty quickly for tempo runs. And then we have a shorter block of anywhere from 5 to 7 days of intensity work where you're going faster than 70.3 pace. It's a lot of threshold or faster type work. And it's having those, like, kind of non-traditional weeks where it's not like, every single Saturday is essentially a long ride and every Sunday is the long run. Kind of lets us feel like we don't have to squeeze everything in to those 7 days, which is, like, when we were balancing everything, we wanted volume work and speed work, and throwing all of that into 7 days every week is challenging sometimes, and it's a lot of stress. And for high intensity stuff, it takes me a little bit longer to absorb the work, and I can handle quite a bit of volume, and actually, feel better sometimes after doing 3 to 5 days of 4 to 6 hour days and just getting in long hours on the bike. But you give me, 2 or 3 days of, like, super high end sprints or all out few minute bike intervals and stuff, and that takes me a little bit to recover from. So this sort of structure just allows us to balance all of that work, make sure the rest is built in, and kind of get both systems working. So you also don't just get stuck in that half Ironman pace, where a lot of times in the races now, especially with St. George coming up at the end of the year, we'll have, anywhere from like 30 seconds up to a 10-minute long interval, basically, with those short punchy hills and then Snow Canyon that comes up at the end of the ride.
So when you're out, are you doing more perceived efforts or just perceived exertion, or are you going by heart rate or power? How are you gauging your workouts?
Yeah, well, I think that it's natural, and I always pay attention to perceived effort. I've been doing it kind of long enough now too to kind of know, like, this is how I would feel on a good day versus a bad day. And it's just one part of the equation, because we also look at power, and you can't just judge a workout by how you're feeling, because a lot of times, I've felt just in a swim in this last week on Sunday. Didn't think I'd even make it through the workout, and ended up having, some really good, fast 200s, and just was able to keep coming back to it. After thinking after the first 100 of the very first one that, man, I'll be lucky if I make one of these. So, yeah, for swimming, we could start there. I usually just go off the pace clock, because that's just, I'm a swimmer. I grew up in the club swimming system, and that's just, I kind of know what paces to be at. Biking is very power based overall. And I think recently we've really tried to, be conservative in some aspects when we go to the heat in Arizona, and we have a hot race coming up in Dallas. So
how do you traditionally do in the heat? Pretty good.
Yeah, I do pretty good. I've had some good races and some bad races, so it's pretty, middle of the road. But with this, we'll do like a heat camp in Arizona, which will be very similar to Dallas. And we don't really go off of heart rate. We just have never really gone that way. But I do think like that's where the perceived effort kind of comes in. And it's kind of learning where that heat ceiling is. So that's where we'll kind of adjust the wattages based on, find a conservative place to start. And if you can work into that, that's great. But just don't go over this, because we know like that's kind of your limit that you would do in the heat anyways. And same thing for the run. We use a running power meter, and that's just been a good way to gauge effort depending on if it's windy, uphill, or anything like that. And that was super key actually for some of my first 70.3s, just staying conservative off the bike, because your neuromuscular system, in your proprioception, you feel like you're moving really slow getting off the bike in a half after going 20 plus miles an hour. And for the pros, a lot of times we're close to 30 miles an hour. And you start running for us, like nowadays, you got to run about a 70-minute half marathon, but that feels almost slow when you are going, that's like 12 miles an hour, maybe after that's not even half the speed that you're going on the bike. So having those watts to kind of say like, hey, keep it under this pace or keep it under this wattage for right now, because you can sustain that for an hour and change. And then if you feel good on the second half, pick it up. So it's all about kind of finding those ranges in the training so that I can pace it correctly and leave a little something for when it really counts in the race.
Yeah. And if you happen to be having a good day, then.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's no limits to it. It's just make sure you get through kind of this first third or the first half somewhat conservatively, so that, because nobody wants to go out in a 4-hour race or something too hard and then spend the last 2 hours dragging yourself home, which I've definitely, been in those experiences before. So it's good to have an idea of what you're capable of. And then, if you can surpass it, that's great.
Yeah, that's good. So hydration wise, how much you drink in an hour? Kind of, I'm sure you have a good idea on your sweat rates and your calories per hour targets.
Yeah. So, the sweat rate, I talked to a lot with, Colin about this. I'd use like a sweat monitor, to kind of, but I let people who are smarter than me, kind of interpret the data and everything. But what we've settled on for racing recently in non-extreme temperatures, I'll call it, is I have 2 bottles on the bike, that are calorie based with my, endurance blend with caffeine, which is we shoot for about 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour, which is on the high end for sure. About like what I think most people kind of shoot for, but that leaves wiggle room for me to, kind of cut back and not feel like I'm going to run out of calories by the end of the race. And I have 1 bottle usually of water just to cool off, dilute if my stomach isn't feeling good or something like that, kind of as like my, all around, like if I'm thirsty, I can drink it. I can pour it on me if I don't get any water at the aid stations. And then usually there's about 1 aid station on the bike for a half, that you can hit relatively well. And that usually gets mainly dumped on me for cooling, and then take as much as I can in a drink real quick and then toss it. And then the run, it's a similar rate of carbohydrates, I'd say, but it's just in more concentrated form. It's about anywhere from 5 to 8 ounces of the run blend that we use on there, which has, again, a little bit of caffeine and some carbohydrate at that about 90 grams, 80 grams an hour. But I just kind of take that in little bits throughout the race. And usually when I'm about 2/3 done, I've ditched the flask or two that I'm carrying and just focus on, a little bit of water and just getting to the finish line.
No, I completely understand that. Yeah, and that's similar to when I was racing, that we would, just super concentrate for the run, which is obviously in a fuel belt, I can get to almost 2,000 calories in a fuel belt, which theoretically is enough to run a marathon, but I always blow through it. So who was faster as a junior? You or Colin? He was asking me about that.
Yeah. I don't know. We'd have to go back and compare the results.
That's good. So you've been working with Colin for a while as far as your nutrition protocols. And I don't know if some people out there may not know what Infinit, we do offer full consultation where we've got registered dietitians, sports nutritionists here, where we'll set athletes up, and you don't have to be a pro athlete like Ben to do it. It's something that we offer to every single age grouper out there.
Yeah, Colin is kind of the constant throughout a lot of the nutrition advice that I've gotten, because I always kind of come back because we've designed the blends together to kind of maximize my nutrition. So like I said, I've used a device to measure sweat rate. I have a Super Sapien device that measures my blood glucose, and they have a nutritionist there. The sweat test, the sweat monitor, also had some people interpret it. And then I kind of come together with Colin and say, hey, this is what everybody else is saying. Like, where do you think that we need to go with the blends here? So it's kind of taking information from a lot of people, but filtering it in and seeing like what actually makes sense to create the blend that we need. And this is a blend I've used, throughout my career, a number of different nutrition types of powders and stuff like that. But this one kind of mimics what I've learned throughout all of that and creates like the best blend for me to use over the distance that's going to be easiest on my stomach and taste the best and all of that stuff. That's
great. And then what do you do for your just day-to-day lifestyle food? What are you, low fat, low carb? What do you do?
I'm a everything in moderation type of guy, but if I'm creating my own meals, like I always try and start get a bunch of vegetables and then a lean protein, and then I just kind of add in kind of carbohydrates where I need it. So just try and make things complex, eat the rainbow. I eat, tons of different types of protein, steak, chicken, you kind of name it. I'm not a picky eater at all. So I just, and I like to enjoy like a beer here or there, or have a dessert. My wife loves dessert. She's a big cake connoisseur. I'm a coffee connoisseur. So like going to coffee shops. So it's, I think that, you have to feed the fire. And especially like for us, I can train, 30 plus hours a week or right around there. And when you're training that much and that hard, you got to make sure that you get the calories to sustain the effort. So I'm always a big proponent to, and just making sure you're topping off the energy levels to make sure that you can get in the quality work.
Well, you are definitely in the land of good cake and good coffee over there right now.
Yeah, for sure. So
put on a couple of pounds, right? So did you watch a bad movie last night?
Not yet. I still have a couple days to find that. I actually haven't. I'm wondering what the Slovakian channels might provide me, but it's usually when you leave the country that you could find the best of the worst. So I actually one of the other things I do before the race,
like an overdubbed version of
exactly,
some bad movie, and check
where that tradition kind of started. And whenever I'm you're in the hotel room anyways, the TV's on in the background. But when I was a junior, I was racing in, it was in French Canada. I want to say it was like Coteau de Lac or something like that. But it was, we were flipping through and there was a movie that like made to TV. It was called like termination point or something like that of an airplane that gets stuck in a wormhole, and they're like trying to get them out of the wormhole. So it was a pretty cheesy movie. And then it just seemed like from there, it's like every time I was at a race, another cheesy movie would be on. So that was kind of, yeah, just a thing to do before the race, just before you turn out the lights. And now I kind of have a t-shirt around too that's got that iconic picture of Muhammad Ali standing over I forget the name, and I don't want to say the wrong name. Yeah, but yeah, so that iconic picture, and I wear that, yeah, exactly, that one before the race. So just kind of getting the right mindset.
That'll do it. That's awesome. Yeah. So do you have a phrase, or because I used to have a velociraptor, which is a really cool, awesome, dangerous, super fast animal that was kind of my mantra. Do you have something?
Yeah, I cycle through mantras. I think I feel like I have a couple good ones. I like watching David Goggins every so often. I always say like a calm mind is a fast mind, but there's that competitiveness in me that, you know, the David Goggins, like you let your inner beast out. Like there's just part of that, like who doesn't like watching, you know, football too, like the tackle videos, just like those hype videos. But he has one too where he's coming off an injury, running, and one of the lines he says is, "You don't know me. Like, you don't know what I do behind the scenes and what I'm capable of and anything like that." So I like that one, as well as like I can take more. And then I always like telling this story. I like the phrase like, that's how we practice, but there's a whole story behind it of, I actually even wasn't there, but my roommate in college also did triathlon, and he hadn't swam for a while at this time. And it was Doug Freeman and TJ Tollickson swimming with them. So two pro triathletes. And Doug is a very soft-spoken guy. He's like 6'3" or something, like big dude, alternate for the Olympics once or twice, just super focused, but very like mellow. And he helped out with the club tri team in Arizona, and they were like swimming 50s. And Steven, my roommate, just wasn't hitting the times that he wanted. He was like wanting to break 30 or 28 or somewhere in there, and was like on the cusp of it. And like Doug and like TJ's trying to get him going. TJ's he's a little bit more expressive, but Doug is sitting there. They're like, all right, this next one, like you're doing it on this one. They get him. He goes in, touches the wall, and like crushes the time. And Doug Freeman just like breaks character and just like hits the water, and it's like, that's how we practice. So that's what we always used to say then for the next few years after we would like crush a workout, just like, that's how we practice. Like you step up and you get the work done. So those are a few that kind of cycle through.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. That the whole mindset before, during, and after is guys, just half of it. It's amazing. You like, what kind of music do you listen to?
A little bit of everything. I mean, from top 40 to rap to heavy rock or metal or whatever. It's just kind of whatever the flavor of the month or the year is.
Yeah, so you're probably influenced by your father, like my kids are, unfortunately.
Yeah,
pretty much.
For sure.
So that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. It's been good to getting to know you. Obviously, we've worked for a couple of years, and I've never met you out at the races before. So it's good to meet you finally, and good luck today. I hope you guys do really well.
Thanks. Yeah, I know the professional Midwest racing scene. I need to get out there more. I'm waiting for Chicago to put back up a prize purse, or to finally make it out. I grew up, my old coach, Adam Zuko, always talked about the Triple T. So I always wanted to do that one. Got to make it back out there for that at some point. So
we've got Matt out. Matt came down. Matt Roswell, and that was actually a really good base period for him, because he had a good racing year after that weekend. And then I haven't got Andy down yet. I'll work on AP to get him over there. But yeah, the Midwest scene is actually pretty decent these days. Chicago, do you know that there's an open water swim going up in Chicago this fall where they're going to be swimming up the river? It's limited.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, if I'll get you some dates for it if you're interested. They're closing the rivers, and it's going to be a 2.5 mile swim downtown Chicago up the rivers.
How is the water quality been
Eh,
since? Well, I guess that's swimming
It'll
up
be
the
fine.
river. It goes reverse.
Mhm.
Right? That's what you learn on the tour, is that the boat tour is the lake. They actually reverse the flow of the river, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And so the city's behind it, and so
Yeah.
there's a Doug Lemmers. He's a big endurance swimmer out of Chicago. So that'll be we're going to be up there. So when you get back, we'll
Nice.
hopefully get up to Chicago.
Yeah,
All right,
that'd
brother.
be
Well, good talking to you. We'll do this again soon. Best of luck. We'll be all cheering for you and the U.S. team. Go USA.
awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Good job.
Thanks.